Hello and welcome to H&L Classics. Today I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the Becker BE1480 radio that we have in our car, and in this car in particular it is a 1991 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL24, and we've got this radio installed in this car to keep it more or less period correct in terms of the look, and I'm going to give you a bit of a tour of what this radio is about and some of the things to look for if you're thinking of getting classic Mercedes in the early 1990s, and whether this radio is appropriate for your car. And I'm going to take it apart and let you take a look at what's in the back so that you're aware of what the plugs are and what's required if you want to install this radio into your car. Now, the Becker 1480 as we have here, it looks quite similar to many of the radios that Becker released about this time. There are many models of that, and this one specifically is the Becker BE1480, and it came out in 1990, and it was quite limited in production just for about a year or so. Now, the difference between these units is that the Becker BE1480, it's a single piece head unit. What that means is that this head unit can be installed in your car, and it has the amp and the tuner all in the head unit itself, whereas some of the models that came with the car from factory were actually two-piece units, namely the Becker BE1432 is an example of a two-piece head unit with the tuner and amp separately mounted in the trunk. So if your car didn't come with this radio in particular, you would find that you would have to get both the amp and tuner and mount it in the trunk, wire it all the way to the head unit here in the front in order for it to work. And if any of them has any issues, you'd find that the whole stereo system would not be working properly. So the BE1480 would be one of the easiest ones to retrofit. And I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of some of the features of this and a bit of commentary over the sound quality of the head unit itself, right? So as you can see here, it's quite a simple head unit to use, but it's got some interesting features here as well. So you'd see that there's the on-off buttons over here, quite simple. The volume controls are here. The FM and AM presets are on the top. You've got a very large, well, relatively large for those days, LCD display here. You've got the controls for your bass and your treble. You've got a function button and a fine-tune button over here, and you've got the seek and scan buttons for your tuners, as well as fine-tuning buttons for the radio station that you want. You've got the cassette port here, and I'll load up a cassette to show you how it works. And you've got the cassette controls over here on the top as well, which I'll run through shortly what they are. So in order to turn on the radio, all you have to do is to just press on over here, and right now the car is completely switched off. As you can see here, the car is off. It's not even on accessory mode, and you should be able to turn on the radio and power on the radio. Now, the reason why that's the case is the radio comes with an anti-theft feature. If the radio is removed for whatever reason, you'd have to input a code the next time that you plug in the radio. It's meant to deter theft of the radio, so that's why it does require constant power input, and therefore you can turn on the radio in the car whenever you need to. So here are the volume controls. You just toggle them up and down here as they are. Now if I just zoom in a little bit closer to the bass and treble controls, it would change the bass and treble settings as you press this up and down. And an interesting feature is that if you want to reset back to original, you press both at the same time and it would reset back to its neutral position. Up here you've got the FM and AM presets, so it's quite simple. If you want to memorize your radio station, all you have to do is to just press the station button that you want and hold, and it would memorize the station as it is. So it can have 6 FM presets as well as 4 AM presets if you still listen to AM stations in this day and age. Now in this particular radio, we've gotten it rewired with Bluetooth, and the Bluetooth has replaced the AM circuit. So in order to listen to Bluetooth, we just switch over to the AM station. If you got Bluetooth connected to the radio via your Android or iPhone, and you can listen to Spotify directly through your Becker radio here as a result of the modification. Now, one interesting feature that I wanted to share with you all is that, and many modern radios don't even do this, and this is just so convenient as to how you want to adjust the radio stations. If you have a particular station in mind, all you have to do is to just press the function button, key in the radio station that you want, and there you go. You've got the radio station there, and you can just press and hold the FM preset and get it to memorize the station that you want. And there's a very straightforward way to get to the radio station that you want without having to tune and to seek and scan wherever that you want to. Yes, this does have the feature to seek and scan radio stations as well, up and down if you want to. That's not an issue, and it works pretty well in that regard. Now, if you want to fine-tune the radio station adjustments as well, you can just press this down and up, and it can further refine by several levels within the same frequency as it is. There's a button over here which is the tuning sensitivity control button, and what that does is that it lets you adjust how sensitive you want the tuning to be to get the precise radio station that you want at a particular frequency if it's difficult to receive, right? So that's for the radio controls. Now let me move on to the cassette controls. What's interesting about this radio is that the cassette and the radio operation are somewhat separate, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. Now, you've got the CR button here. What that does is that if you've got metal cassette tapes, this feature or this function helps you to get the better sound out of the cassette tape if you do use metal cassettes in whatever case. This here is to eject the cassette. So these two buttons here are what you would think is the rewind and the forward buttons on the cassette. That is not the case. This is actually flipped around, interestingly enough. The R here denotes rewind, whereas this button here is to move the cassette tape forward. This button is on the track selection, either track 1 and track 2. This button can be used to switch to the tape's other side without having to remove and to flip the cassette manually. And this last button here is the Dolby B and Dolby C noise reduction function. If you have a cassette that was recorded using the Dolby B or Dolby C noise reduction system, pressing this button would help reduce any hiss or noise on the playback of the cassette. Now let us pop in a cassette and you can take a look at how it works. Being fanatics that we are, we actually got custom mixtapes made for this car with period correct hit songs. Don't ask us why, we just did it. And it came in a 3-volume cassette with what the car looks like from the exterior. So this is custom made for this car. So we've got our cassette here, which we're going to insert in. It goes in this way actually, straight ahead. And you can take a listen as to how it sounds like when it goes in. So that plays the cassette directly. As you can see, it's auto in, auto out. So it pops out on its own. Just take it out like that. And all the features and functions that I explained earlier. This button switches the track back and forth. I tell you, every time that the radio does this, it sounds like it's eating up the cassette, right? It's a bit unnerving, but you get used to it. This cassette tape, the way it works is that once it's in, the radio cassette takes over, the radio stops playing. No matter what you press up here, nothing outputs from the radio. Now, if you're asking about sound quality of this radio and the power output of this radio, now bear in mind that this radio was made for cars in the 1990s, early 1990s, right? And that was before the days of crazy sound systems and subwoofers. And people have been saying that the Becker radios, the sound is crap, it's lousy, it's poor sound quality, so on and so forth. Now, if you're an audiophile, yes, that is true. The power output of this is not rated very high to begin with. But if you're a true audiophile, you would know that the car is the worst place to have a sound installation in it, right? The acoustics are just horrible in a car, and I'll just leave it as that, right? Now, in terms of the sound quality for radio, it is perfectly fine. It's very crisp and very clear. If you're talking about cassette tapes, it's also the same thing. The only weak point on this radio would be, as I said, the power output. So if you've got powerful subwoofers. It's not going to deliver the full range of bass that you'd require from the system. So that's my comments on the sound quality of this radio. I'm going to remove the radio and let you take a look at what it's like behind it. I'm going to switch off the radio, and every time you turn off the radio, the cassette will pop out on its own. So in order to remove the radio, you notice that this one does not have any sophisticated removal tools on this radio. It doesn't have slots at the bottom. To remove the radio is fairly straightforward, though you've got to be careful. Whenever you remove the radio, do make sure that your gear selector lever is all the way down, shifted this way. And we want to do that because you want to avoid damaging your gear lever whenever you pull out the radio. Now, to remove this radio, you've got to gently just pull it out. It's as simple as that. There are no clips to this particular radio. It just slots in very, very snugly. And in order to do so, you reach in and you grasp the chassis. Make sure that you've got the chassis grasped, not the buttons here, right? So you gently pull on the faceplate here and just wiggle it out here, and as you ease out the radio, it would slowly come out, as you can see. Once it's out to this extent, pull from the chassis itself, and there you have it. This is how you pull out the radio. So let me just pull out and unplug the radio and show you what it looks like behind. So as you can see, this is what the radio looks like from behind. The various ports that you need, so you have to make sure you've got your own wiring harness for this radio. And let me just explain what the various ports do. This is your main port. This is where the power output goes into, as well as the inputs for the illumination, right? So the illumination will come on when you turn on the lights of your car, and it comes in through here. This little port over here is where the power antenna trigger would be, so you have to make sure that it's wired up so that your power antenna would be triggered as soon as the radio is switched on. Over here you've got two ports for the left and right speaker output respectively, and this is the port for the anti-theft device, which in this particular radio we don't have it. It's been overridden. And over here is your input for the antenna signal, right? So in what the wiring harness looks like, it's like this. So this is the main power input to the radio. You've got to make sure you've got the harness like this, and these are the harnesses for the speakers, left and right respectively, and this is the input for the antenna. And the last one is just over here. It's a small one. This is a connector that we fashioned out for the power antenna trigger. This radio does come with an operation guide as well, and it'd be good if you could add this to your collection to complete the radio. And it comes with all the useful information in terms of how to operate the radio as well. So I hope you found that overview of the Becker BE1480 useful. If you have a 1990 or 1991 or 1992 Mercedes-Benz, this radio will be absolutely suitable for your car, whether it's a W126, W124, R129, W140. This radio would definitely fit into those years, and as you can see, it's quite a good and robust radio. If you have one of these in your car existingly and you want to upgrade to an aftermarket system, I would advise you to at least keep the radio handy. You never know when a collector might want to pick it up, and these radios are actually pretty good and they suit the car very well. So hope you found this video useful. Do follow us on Facebook as well as YouTube. Do like and subscribe as well if you want more videos such as this, and we'll see you in the next video.